Hi everyone, thanks for dropping by and for returning to the Old World. Today, who is Warhammer the Old World actually for? Now, we know that the game's coming at some point, but what we don't really know is what is the target market? I asked the people who look at my videos, and I've also done some digging around for comments on this topic. And it turns out that the community seems as confused about this as I am. So what might the answer be? To delve into this question, what I've done is look into a number of different cohorts that make up the Warhammer playing community, and I'll give my thoughts on each of those in turn. Now, the first of these cohorts is the veterans, the people who played the game back when it existed and may have been playing the game for a number of editions before then. Now, a lot of people online have commented that these are the people that Warhammer Old World is for, these long-term fans. But I'm not so sure we can really look at them as a single group of people. Well, why is this? Well, I think as a group it's fairly fractured and splintered, with different people having very different desires and interests when it comes to Warhammer. You've got the old Hammer fans. You've got the people that played 8th edition and really liked that. 8th edition being a very different game from things like 5th and 6th. You've got the people that moved on to 9th Age and community-based rule systems. People that have gone to other providers and play other fantasy rank and flank games like Kings of War. You've got obviously people that moved to Age of Sigmar and rebased everything from their square bases onto circle bases. And you've got the people who were actually quite disgruntled, more so than everyone else, around the loss of Warhammer Fantasy. Maybe they've sold their armies, maybe they haven't. But if you look at forums, there are still a significant number of people that are still really unhappy with the decision to introduce the end times, to kill the Warhammer world, and undo effectively the hundreds and thousands of hours and the significant amount of money people have ploughed into their hobby. These are all quite diverse subgroups, I think. Now, apart from the people that have sold their armies, people in this group, if they're going to play Warhammer Old World, let's face it, they've probably got armies already that they've been collecting for quite a long time. So they may well buy the rulebook, they might buy a starter kit, they might buy a few units for armies they've already had, but equally, I think they're likely to watch and see how the situation unfolds. What do I mean by this? Well, they're probably not going to necessarily rush into buying whole new armies of Games Workshop figures because, let's face it, these people have got long memories, and we know that Games Workshop doesn't always support games in the long term. They might well take a watching brief, see do they like the game, does a community playing the latest version of the game develop where they are there events for them to go to, all these sort of things. Things that after maybe a handful of initial purchases will lead to a tailoring off of buying power, buying interest. And if these are the sort of people that we're looking at to say, this is why the game will survive or fail, people not making regular purchases would probably make the game more likely than not to fall by the wayside. Okay, so it's not the veterans. Let's say it's not them. What about new players? Well, rank and flank fantasy isn't a gateway game. It's more of a destination. And certainly people of my generation got into it through things like Battle Masters, through Hero Quest, smaller scale stuff that you then build up towards bigger armies. And of course, back in the day then as well, armies were a lot smaller than they were by the time of 8th edition. And there's another factor we need to consider really with new players as well. Cost. Let's look at those new Age of Sigmar models the Slaves to Darkness stuff that's just come out. Now, no getting away from it, they look absolutely lovely models. But for regular infantry, if we call them that, we're looking at a price point of £3.70 a model RRP. For those people who are working in dollars or euros at the moment, it's largely 1-to-1, so 370 of USD or euro, I guess. Now, these models are effectively Chaos Warriors. Now, I've seen some argument to say that these are Age of Sigmar models. They're obviously very large, detailed, nice-looking figures, but they won't be crossing over into the Warhammer section. I'm not so sure about that. I think why would Games Workshop release Chaos Warrior models and have a different version of the same model for Age of Sigmar? I think where there is the opportunity to have one range that covers both games, they will go with that, and the cost is the cost. High cost of entry, let's face it, was a big factor, I think, in making 8th edition fall and fail. And I don't see the newer players being willing to splash out £74 for a single usable unit. I say £74 because we're effectively looking at a unit of 20 there, so needing 2 boxes. That's a lot of change. So it's not newer players. How about kids? Well, Warhammer's always been luxury to a certain extent, but there was pocket money price points back in the day. I remember being able to buy a unit of 10 models for £5. Now, as a child looking at pocket money rates, all right, I wouldn't be buying a box of models every month, but it wasn't something that could be reached to fairly easily every few months. You could get yourself a little box of something as a treat. Then there was the bigger items, the pricier of more grown-up items, if you like, that you could either save up for or reserve as your sort of Christmas present, your birthday present, things like that. So if you wanted a command blister, so a pack of 3 models with your musician, champion and standard bearer in it, you might get one of those irregularly. You might have that big ticket item for Christmas, your dragon, your steam tank, something like that. But I now come back to the previous point on cost, is you just don't seem to have models at that sort of price point. Models where people can go, well, actually, I can just afford to fairly regularly just trickle money into Games Workshop and pick up the odd bits and pieces. So, next cohort, what have we got? Let's look at Total War players. Now, a lot of people again have said Total War fans of certainly Total War Warhammer, are the target market of this game. And I could well believe that this was the original intention. There's millions of people that have played Total War Warhammer around the world, and to say to them, here's another way of playing this game you really like, seems really sensible. But, and there's always this but, Total War Warhammer's pretty much done now. We've seen all 3 installments of the game come out. The Immortal Empires for the 3rd installment's been released. And what is there? Maybe a few bits of DLC to come? That peak excitement point seems to have passed. So Games Workshop may well have missed the boat here if this was their original intention. We've not got this big shiny new game or even a big drop within the game to galvanise people to want to play the game in different ways and explore that setting further. Maybe in a way that's not tied into the legendary named lords. The ability to create your own lord, as you can on the tabletop, is a great option, but we're moving further and further away from that peak excitement point. So perhaps it's not these people either. That leaves me with really one thought left, which is maybe a subset of your veteran gamers, really. These are the people who are interested in a luxury hobby product. They're probably a little bit older with a bit more disposable income. Now, Games Workshop, as I say, has always been a luxury hobby, and it's becoming more and more so looking at the price point of some of the recent releases. So perhaps Games Workshop's intention here is to move away from that steady trickle. We're at lots of sales, to say, with Warhammer Old World, we accept that our sales are going to be a bit lower. But what we are going to do is have a really good markup on every model that we produce. The models are going to be exquisite, the detail fantastic, absolute individual works of art. And people will buy them on that basis. Now, this kind of relegates Warhammer Old World to very much the world of specialist games that will see a limited amount of support, if this is true, but it could be a way that Games Workshop end up going if their other target markets are going to fall by the wayside. Now, obviously the only people that know who the real target market here, or Venn diagram of target markets here, are Games Workshop insiders, and I am absolutely not one of those people. I can only speculate. I may be entirely wrong with my thoughts, and it might be a different cohort I've not even considered. But only time will tell. As for now, all I can do is thank you for stopping by and listening to my thoughts on this topic. I'm Return to the Old World. Have a great day.